Bienvenidos, Fright fans! Welcome to the horror show. I'm Jaime and Fuego here, bringing you another special edition here on Sunday, the Sabbath day of Hail to Stephen King. That's right, the first since my Road to the Dark Tower movie panel at the Phoenix Comic-Con last week. Gracias to anybody who tuned into that on the live stream. Yes, I know I had a very energetic co-panelist on that, but hey, if you got the chance to watch it, it's up on YouTube right now here on the horror show, and I'm also going to be doing a director's edition, as Cecil called it on the news recently, where we're actually going to incorporate better sound, the multiple camera angles that we actually filmed it with. But thanks once again to everybody who tuned into the live stream. So, hail to Stephen King. This episode is going to be the first time where I'm actually reviewing a book that has just come out. That's right, Gwendy's Button Box. Now, I have to give a little context to this first and foremost, as you know who have tuned into this program before. I started a few years ago, about 7 at this point, at the very beginning with Carrie, and decided to read every Stephen King book in published order all the way through because of the fact that so much of it ties into the Dark Tower. Dark Tower movie is coming out in August. Very excited about that. It's a whole year of King with the Mr. Mercedes TV show, with, oh goodness, the Mist TV show that's coming, with the Castle Rock TV series announcement. And Castle Rock is actually very important to note here because this story starts and takes place in 1974 in Castle Rock. That's right, Castle Rock, the infamous town that had so many different stories set there, from Cujo to Needful Things to, first and foremost, the Dead Zone. And yet that book took place in 1979 when it was originally published, although there are flashbacks to, you know, when Mr. Smith was first getting injured as a kid, who was awesomely portrayed in the Cronenberg film by, that's right, Mr. Kristopher Walken. But, so this is kind of maybe the first Castle Rock story, I guess you could say, and it's a story that had never been told until now because it gives a little bit more context about the geography of Castle Rock, because as it says in the description of this little novella that King co-wrote with Cemetery Dance founder, publisher, Richard Chizmar, who they also released this book, but they did these beautiful hardcovers that you see there. They're re-releasing King stuff in published order right now, which is kind of cool. So I've already got Carrie and Salem's Lot there, but I also have on order The Shining, but the stuff that they did for Secretary of Dreams, from a Buick 8 that I just finally tracked down, for the 25th anniversary of It, The Dark Man, which was an old poem that King wrote when he was super, super young and still in college, that they illustrated so beautifully. The stuff that they have done with King, whether it was Dr. Sleep, Full Dark No Stars, I mean, everything is tremendously put together, an amazing package, as this book is as well. The illustrations inside are great, but being a novella, it's a very kind of short and condensed story, and the geography that I was referencing there a moment ago is the fact that there is a place right by Castle Rock called Castle View, and there's only a couple ways to get there. One is like an interstate road, but most notably another one is this, it's like stairs going up like a cliff kind of thing called the Suicide Stairs, and they have their name for a very distinctive reason that you're going to have to read the book to actually find out. But this story follows a lady by the name of Gwendy Peterson, who's 12 years old, and she's trying to get in a little bit of shape, right? The kids at school are calling her Goodyear. She's got some extra LBs on her, as my father would say, and so she's training. She's about to start junior high. She does not want to have that horrible like tagline follow her there, and she's got a boy who's a total butthole of a kid who's teasing her and stuff, but that's neither here nor there, because the real just fabric of this story is an encounter that Gwendy has when she is running up the stairs one day, and who could it be but a maybe familiar character for anybody who has read Stephen King before, by the name of Richard Ferris, RF. Who could this guy possibly be? Well, you figure it out for yourself. Read the novella. And their encounter essentially encompasses some presumed Chester the Molester-ness? Why is this old guy that you see right there on the cover of this book, so beautifully illustrated, with a top hat, wearing this long coat and stuff like that, especially in the middle of the summer? You're like, man, I got the lack of sleeves on for a reason. It is the summer here in Arizona. It's hot as hell, man. Even here in my house, the air conditioning isn't properly doing it. But yeah, it's got some odd connotations right off the bat, but they're addressed quickly, and you start to realize this guy isn't Chomo status. He has something much bigger and crazier to just kind of impart to Ms. Gwendy. And so, yeah, it's an interesting back and forth. It's probably the best scene for me in the entire book. It's one that in the little audio interview, which is at the very end of the Audible, which I cannot stress enough how cool this Audible is. It's I actually read the novella and then also listened to the audio dramatization of it, although it's just one lady who's actually doing it, and her name is Maggie Siff, and people have probably seen her on Mad Men. She was also on Sons of Anarchy, I think like all of the seasons of it, and now she's currently on a show called Billions, and this is like the first full-on audiobook that she's read, and she does a pretty good job of just giving some vulnerability to the character, being a feminine voice, and also, you know, a girl as the lead character. It really lent itself well. I have liked some other Stephen King audiobooks better, but the Audible of this was very good and imparted some of the emotion in a pretty cool manner. And so the button box that is there in the title is what Ferris gives her, and I don't want to spoil really much about what happens beyond this initial encounter, with the exception of the fact that it's very cool how there's a total of 8 buttons on top of this box there, and they all have kind of corresponding colors. There's red on one side, black on the other side, and then in the center you've got a dark green, you've got a light green right next to it, you've got a yellow, you've got an orange, you've got a blue, and there's, you know, they all kind of correspond with certain parts in the world without really revealing too much, but there is power in this box corresponding with those buttons, and yet there is also dueling sides of reward for holding onto this box. So tiny little lever on one side that she has to like use her pinky to even pull the lever because it's so dainty and tiny. One side spits out a little jelly bean size intricate like chocolate animal, and then the other side spits out an 1891 super rare silver dollar that even back in the 70s when this book takes place is worth like $600 back then. So just wrap your head around that. But the reason there's these 2 rewards being dispersed on each side from this box that RF is giving her is the fact that there's just so much of a burden of responsibility from holding onto this box, and how you treat whether you push or do not push the buttons. And there's a really interesting analogy about being a button pusher that comes near the end of the book. But as a whole, this collaboration with Chizmar, who wrote a collection of short stories that I really want to check out called Long December, I haven't read any of his stuff, but I love, you know, CD, I love Cemetery Dance, and so this was kind of tough for me as a King collaborative work for me to completely embrace, because the stuff that he did with Stuart Onan, like A Face in the Crowd, and even Faithful, which was nonfiction following the Boston Red Sox in that year when they lifted the curse, but also the stuff he did with Joe Hill, Throttle and In the Tall Grass, and then very curious about the upcoming Sleeping Beauties that he did with his other son, Owen King. Yeah, that's right. Owen is actually using the family name to hopefully gain some notoriety. Not to, you know, knock him or anything, but that book comes out in September, and I'm super stoked to check it out. The Peter Straub stuff, you know, I like the Talisman a whole lot more than Black House, but they were still really, really cool and tied in with the Tower. But I must say this one had some strengths here and there. There is actually one particular bit about halfway through the book that ties into Jonestown. If anybody knows that, I cannot say anything more than that because it would be spoiling things, but very, very cool tie-in. But as a whole, the story of the repercussions from this girl holding on to this box and having to keep it a secret from her parents, and that weird initial encounter, and just some of the good and the bad that happens because of her possessing it, it was intriguing at times, but as a big fan of King's short fiction and collaborative, you know, fiction that I was just talking about, I can't say I was really that blown away. I did enjoy the illustrations. you know, and I did really enjoy what Maggie did with the Audible, but at the end of the day, hey, it's King, so it's cool, you know, it's interesting, and it has a lot of his trademark stuff, but I really, maybe my hopes were too high. I was a little underwhelmed, unfortunately. So that's not me to dissuade you from purchasing it, because support the King, support Chizmar, man, because he does such great stuff with CD. They're actually the ones who are putting out the deluxe edition of Sleeping Beauties that I am so excited for. They debuted some artwork from that just this past week, which was cool as well. So as a whole, I unfortunately was underwhelmed by Gwendy's Button Box, but I have to really turn things around quickly and mention the Music Room, which is actually a bonus on the Audible. So this is one that I think I heard about, but just didn't take the time to seek out because it appeared in the December edition of Playboy, December 2016. Yes, King has published in many, how do I put this lightly, lady featuring magazines in his near 5 decades, or over 5 decades at this point of writing. But this Audible, the second half, it was just like a little bonus feature where Siff also reads The Music Room. And this is based on an Edward Hopper painting called Room in New York that Stephen King drew some inspiration from, that was released in 1932. So it was released in the Great Depression era. And what Hopper did very interestingly in the painting, as you're looking at right now, is draw expressionless faces almost. So you see, like, you know, they're very well formed, and it's a very intimate scene that was apparently inspired by him just walking through I think the Washington district or something like that. So he's essentially walking around in the city in the early 30s, and he peers into a window and sees a couple, and yet he can't quite make out their faces and what they're talking about or the emotions they're experiencing or what they're doing. But this needs to be listened to because and it needs to be read as well, because I, dare I say it, like this better than Gwendy's Button Box. And that's not to knock Gwendy's Button Box, but The Music Room was the perfect snapshot of King's short, like really, really short fiction, because it's very, 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 you know, minuscule in comparison with, I think, the near 170 pages of the novella up there. But it's about this couple named the Enderbys, and they have had to take some matters into their own hands in kind of an extreme fashion to survive all of the economic downturn that's going on, you know, in the post-Great Depression in the United States. And so their music room is where they're hanging out for the entirety of this short story, and they unfortunately were not able to have children, and so the room that they were saving for, you know, some progeny has turned into just kind of a chill-out music room. He's reading, she's sitting, wanting to tickle the ivories a little bit, but not quite doing it. And it's not so much a hobby that they've taken up, but a means for assisting with survival. So this story it's a perfect example of a great King short story for me. Now, novella, short story, once again, as I mentioned, a lot different in comparison. The reason I like King's really, really short stuff so much is he often has to, as opposed to meandering, like he does with many things, just get right to it. And the twist in this comes quite quickly, and it's very cool, and yet it also very intriguingly references, you know, just the cartoons appearing in the funnies and, you know, the newspapers and stuff back in the 30s. You know, you've got some Flash Gordon, you've got some Dick Tracy references, and it's interesting interplay between a husband and a wife, you know, which I'm assuming King is drawing inspiration here from, you know, him and Tabby, but it's yeah, it's a great story, man. So whether you listen to it on the Audible or on like audiobooks.com, I've got memberships for both because I love to both listen and read and just kind of go back. And King actually has championed audiobooks quite a bit as I've listened to lately, you know, just hearing him talk about how, you know, when you're reading, you can sometimes get disengaged, and if you're listening to something and, you know, probably going on his walks like he, you know, enjoys doing and stuff, it's front and center, and it's much tougher to ignore than if you're like breezing through the pages and stuff like that. So I gotta extend the grande gracias to all the Hail to Stephen King fans that have been trudging along with me as the length of the episodes has changed a lot. You know, there's certain weeks when I do like a big featured episode that is a super deep dive, like I did with, you know, Bachman, or like I did with the Castle Rock universe, which I urge all of you to check out. Maybe that's one of the things that I could say was one of my disappointments with Gwendy's Button Box, was I thought it was really going to have more Castle Rock references, and I mean there's a few things, but I mean it was not like all over like I was anticipating, especially being the first entry that I'd seen since I think Premium Harmony, but that was like just a couple years ago. I mean the first official since I want to say The Man in the Black Suit and The Man in the Suit, which is a damn good short story. But yeah, what this would really work best as is an episode of that upcoming Castle Rock television series where it has references to the King universe, but it's really its own thing at the end of the day. It's pretty self-encompassing, and it ties in with the universe to some degree, but it can stand on its own as well. So, man, wouldn't that be cool? Mr. Chizmar, I know you and King know way better than me, man, but I would love to see this adapted as an episode of that TV series. I think that would be wicked, wicked cool. Did I just hit the pulse of something? Maybe. Maybe. Probably not. I'm not that smart when it comes to things like this and sniffing them out. But hey, that would be really cool if it was the case. So once again, grande gracias. We are going to be having more Dark Tower coverage in the next few weeks. Yep, we're going to be doing a Little Sisters of Eulalia bit, which is going to talk about the Marvel comic and the that's pretty much a novella in and of itself, the one that appeared in Everything's Eventual and then was its own standalone release. And the reason for that is because he references his other woman that he had an affinity for besides Susanna, that being Mr. Roland Deschain, in the 5th book, Wolves of Kala. I have reviewed 5.5 Dark Tower books at this point here for the channel, which, you know, the 4.5 being Wind Through the Keyhole, and Wolves of the Kala is the most recent. Song of Susanna is coming on the 19th here in June, and then the final, and I think it is the largest entry in the series, the Dark Tower, Book 7, the final one, is going to be appearing on the 19th of July. So in early July, you guys will get some more deep dives and some more just, I guess, more broad King coverage here on Hail to Stephen King, a show that I am so proud to be doing here on The Horror Show. I have been Jaime and Fuego once again. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I'm still in the process of sorting out this Fuegotainment relaunch. More details are coming soon, but between helping Mad Monster with launching their YouTube channel and with all the Phoenix Comic-Con coverage and the 8 panels that we did, it just was not able to debut as soon as I would like, but that's okay. That's okay. There's a lot of cool stuff King-wise coming with, we're going to do a retro review of it, and, you know, obviously Sleeping Beauty's in September. I'm very much looking forward to this. But bottom line, go to your bookstore and buy Gwendy's Button Box and make up your own mind. I have a lot of King friends that really, really enjoyed this a lot more than me. I did not hate this book. I still really quite liked it, but I think the pairing just had my expectations too high, which, you know, the burden of anticipation sometimes. But it's a beautifully put together book, and Cemetery Dance Publications is very, very deserving of your money. It's their first bestseller, which is pretty rad status. So once again, I've been Fuego, and until next time, may your days be long upon the earth, and until the Wheel of Ka brings us back again to more Hail to Stephen King coverage, hasta luego, sin amigos. I hope it's sooner rather than later, and until next time, remember, stay scared and read Stevie K, baby. Damn right.